Okay, I think we are ready to begin. And if people come in, I will be posting the instructions or Zoom etiquette in the chat so they can see it there. Thank you all for joining us this evening for Creative Placemaking, 6th Street Arts Alley with LAA Office, the design studio of Lulu Loquidis and Daniel Luis Martinez. This event is presented by the Columbus Area Arts Council, whose programs are supported by the City of Columbus, the Indiana Arts Commission, and the National Endowment for the Arts. During Lulu and Daniel's presentation, attendees will be muted by default. This is to lessen overlapping noises or voices and to help everyone hear Lulu and Daniel as clearly as possible. To ask a question or raise a comment, please type it into the chat field. If you don't see that in your Zoom window, hover your cursor at the bottom of the screen. A toolbar should appear where you can click the chat option. Once we reach the question and answer portion of the program, if you would prefer to ask your question verbally, please mention that in the chat field or go to Reactions in the Zoom toolbar and click Raise Hand. You may also send your question via email to info@artsincolumbus.org or comment on the Facebook live stream at facebook.com/artsincolumbus/live. The Arts Council will rejoin Lulu and Daniel for Q&A after their presentation, but for now, I will let LAA Office take it away.
Thank you, Chris. And thanks everyone for joining us on a Thursday evening. We realize this is Thursday evenings are getting more and more lucrative as we get closer to summer and it stays sunnier longer. So we appreciate your efforts here. And thank you also to the Arts Council for hosting this event. This project, in particular, the 6th Street Arts Alley, is very special to our hearts. It's a project that has emerged out of conversations with community members, community partners, and our collaborators in our creative practice. And we're so happy to be able to have the attempt even to shepherd a dream into potential reality here in Columbus. So, I'm going to share my screen momentarily. We've prepared about a 20 to 25 minute presentation. We'll talk a little bit about some of the principles that drive our creative work, as well as, of course, the 6th Street Arts Alley and what that's all about. And then we'll be joined by the Arts Council, by Catherine Armstrong, I believe, for some Q&A afterwards. So hang in there with us, and then we'll be on our way. Give me one moment here. Okay, so I'm going to start with a quote from an urban theorist and historian named Malcolm Miles, who writes that perhaps it will be in the spaces between disciplines that alternative frameworks will emerge. And I use this quote because in 2018, when Lulu and I moved to Columbus, really we co-founded this multidisciplinary studio in search of what Malcolm Miles refers to as alternative frameworks. And the letters of our name, LAA, come from the disciplines whose boundaries define our interstitial investigations. That's landscape, art, and architecture. But as Chris did such a good job in doing, we pronounce it LAA Office. There's a surprising power, I think, that emerges when you call someone on the phone and say, hey, this is Daniel or Lulu from LAA Office. We'd like to speak with you. Not normally accorded to designers. Our practice takes inspiration from the significant legacy of art and design in Columbus, Indiana. And our work also consistently explores a new model of contemporary practice that aims to invest value into overlooked urban sites through a synthesis of public art and public space design. Our public work is driven by 4 principles. The first of which is to intentionally blur the boundaries between public art and public space. In many ways, this is a critique of what happened in the advent of modernism in the early 20th century, which indelibly impacted the cross-pollination of ideas between public art and public space design. Modernist architects and urban designers often favored the juxtaposition of formally expressive artworks against the rigid order of autonomous buildings or plazas, thus emphasizing a divide between disciplines. Daley Plaza in Chicago maybe is a typical example, and though there are aspects of a project like this that we really like, we find ourselves equally fascinated by the person who wheels out a stack of chairs to this plaza, allowing citizens to adapt for themselves and take over the space to enjoy it as much as we are the artwork or the architecture in the background. I should say that there were designers working at the fringes of modernism in the 20th century that explicitly sought alternatives. One such is Brazilian artist and landscape architect Roberto Burle Marx, who produced urban scale projects like the Copacabana Promenade. This applied the compositional and geometric explorations of his painterly work directly to the public realm. In a very different way, the collaboration between Catalan architects and artists Josep Maria Jujol and Antoni Gaudi brought innovation to public space in their audacious Parque Güell. The project's elevated plaza is lined with a continuous bench that sinuously weaves in and out to create intimate spaces of encounter. That simultaneously, it carries a complex mosaic across the horizon, overlooking the La Salut neighborhood in Barcelona. Now, these examples represent a deep exploration of the space between art and urban design. They also deny the singularity of object-oriented art in favor of something more participatory and inclusive. They deploy unique formats, a boardwalk mural at Copacabana and a sculptural mosaic bench in Barcelona. Now, the second principle which grounds our work is to seek out underused and overlooked spaces in cities in order to transform and add value to them. In this sense, our work can also be considered part of a growing movement of renegade design ideologies that include tactical urbanism, urban acupuncture, guerrilla urbanism, pop-up urbanism, and I'm telling you, many, many, many more names that employ a distinctly millennial nomenclature. This fundamental idea creates opportunities to engage with neglected pockets of urban space. Here you see an empty parking lot in downtown Salem, Indiana, where we've been fortunate to do some work lately through the Center for Rural Engagement. Taking on sites like this avoids the additional costs or restrictions associated with more desirable real estate. This is an image of our proposal for a new pocket park in this area. In our opinion, through the project, the site is no longer marginal in the city, but imagined instead as having civic purpose. We're working with local stakeholders there, generous grants, as I mentioned, from the Center for Rural Engagement, as well as rural opportunity initiatives. And we designed a new promenade that will connect the town's central square with a historical museum. The pocket park itself acts as an anchor of public space along the way. In addition, the project will also honor the narratives and contributions of significant women in the county's history through new public artworks that will be essential in how the park is bounded or held by its environment. Now, this principle is not limited just to exterior areas, but can be applied to interior spaces as well. As we found in one of our first collaborations with the Columbus Area Arts Council for the 411 Community Studio. It's a good example of retrofitting an undervalued room in their existing art gallery to create spaces of engagement for the public. This was done essentially by inserting a new wrapper within the room that's perforated and sometimes thickened for storage or display. And now anyone in the community can contact the Arts Council to use the room for various purposes. There's a fold-out desk. There's an all-important wine and beer fridge and a free Wi-Fi there as well. Can also simply augment their display space during exhibitions. Thirdly, a principle I'll mention here is one that underscores the potential of a bottom-up process for implementing public works that's rooted within the community. This strategy implies a critique of traditional methods for designing and constructing public spaces, which often begin through an RFP or an RFQ issued by government agencies. Instead, we prefer to begin projects through direct engagement with community partners, and we try to involve the public creatively along the way. Our mural along 6th Street titled Learning Patterns is an example of this, and one which in many ways spurred broader thinking about the nature of 6th Street. During the opening of this exhibition, we were unafraid of using DIY urbanism in collaboration with neighbors in order to temporarily transform the street into a venue of public gathering. Finally, we try to instill the characteristic of flexibility in both our process and our projects. In this way, a unified aesthetic language isn't the principal aim of our approach. We treat each site, or at least try to, and each brief as a particular set of conditions worthy of a unique response. Furthermore, we strive to create work that is purposely ambiguous in how it implies function, thus inviting folks to invent new ways of occupying and using these structures and spaces. So Lulu's gonna take over from here.
So in late 2019, we were approached by the Visitor Center and the Columbus Area Arts Council to study creative ways to incorporate flexible public amenities through art and design along 6th Street. And I'm sure many of you are very familiar with 6th Street, but as you can see from this aerial, we're talking specifically about the portion of 6th Street that sits between Washington Street and Franklin Street.
Sorry, that's better.
One of our first insights we had when studying 6th Street more closely was the fact that it really is such an anomaly in the city grid. The street is truncated on the west side by existing businesses and on the east side by the library's parking lot. Ultimately, we find that 6th Street exhibits characteristics more of an urban room than of a vehicular street. We looked closely at the Envision Columbus plan when we began our study. The relationship of this project with the Envision Columbus master plan aligns closely with many of its goals. We really liked this quote and thought that it embodies the energy of this project. And the quote is, "We have to continue investing in our downtown to ensure our community remains relevant, active, and vibrant while improving the quality of life for all of its citizens." A lot of community engagement was also done during the Envision efforts. And this document reported that 60% most often go downtown to relax, meet with friends and family, and have fun. 42% responded they would like to see more outdoor performance space, while 57% responded that more outdoor seating would be needed in the downtown area. We also kind of wanted to note that we'll be sending out, a digital survey to everyone that's participating in today's meeting to get more direct feedback in the coming weeks as it relates to the 6th Street project directly. Another thing the Envision Columbus plan did was define 4 unique district corridors, which include the Commerce Corridor of Washington Street, the Architectural Corridor of 5th Street with all of our incredible architecture, wonderful architecture of Columbus, excuse me, the Entertainment Corridor of 4th Street. And in this plan, Jackson Street is defined as the Arts and Education Corridor. Though the architecture program is a significant anchor for 2nd Street, there is a growing concentration of art activities and organizations along 6th Street. As you can see from this diagram, we have the Arts Council, the 411 Gallery, Landmark Columbus Foundation, Jonathan Nesci, the Learning Patterns mural, as we've shown earlier, Heritage Fund, proximity to Viewpoint Books, and also a direct relationship to the Visitor Center, and of course, our wonderful public library. So when we started to think about 6th Street and the principles that Daniel discussed earlier, we set out to break down the design elements into what we describe as a kit of parts. And with this kit of parts, we started by thinking about the ground plane and really as a flexible space that could be used for events, but also thinking about how we could use art to provide a sense of place and really pull one in. We looked at the vertical building planes as a way to continue the mural and to really create an immersive experience. And then lastly, we looked at the overhead plane as a way to investigate creating shade and incorporating lighting. So we threw out a really big idea, and in doing so, we asked ourselves, how could we urbanize 6th Street through public art and flexible seating? We presented this concept back in February 2020, and we had great conversations about the potential of a project like this in Columbus. Sorry. Where am I? Sorry, I lost my place. The initial concept looked at including a large ground mural that would ultimately fold up onto the Oddfellows facade. And as part of this project, we also incorporated a flexible seat that could be deployed during street closures and also create an instant public space. The idea with the seating was it also could be put together to create different configurations. And then lastly, we dreamed about this idea of a shade canopy with integrated lighting. Ultimately, it's our recommendation that the 6th Street itself remains open for vehicles. Some seating would be permanent, and of course, the mural would continue to denote that this is a special place in our city. Now we wanted to share a video that captures the spirit of sort of where we ended with the initial vision. Please keep in mind that this was a concept that was presented a year ago. And then after the video, we're going to talk more specifically about where the project currently is and how it continues to evolve.
Okay, so that as Lulu mentioned, that video represents where we ended in our study that took place at the beginning of last year, and we didn't know it at the time, but we were soon all to be quarantined, dealing with much larger issues. Fortunately, the perseverance of our community partners meant that we were able to pick up studying this project once again in the fall, and we've been working on how to break things down into achievable phases. Again, working with our partners in the project, we've managed, in fact, to raise some funds through grants and private donors. It's been an incredible ride, and I believe the total, if I can say this, Catherine, I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to, but is around 55,000 so far, which is a remarkable step towards potential realization. What we've been really developing is a plan at the moment that focuses on the center of the street where it meets the alley as the heart of the project's first phase, the idea being that it can expand outward to the east or west over time. This is a site plan, a conceptual site plan showing the potential extents of a phase one, which would link several of the neighborhood's organizations. We're proposing the removal of existing curbs and a single private parking space, thanks especially to Catherine and Tracy Souza at the Heritage Fund for that one, immediately adjacent to the CAAC offices. In order to really ignite the process of urbanization, it creates a kind of piazza with this historic carriage house as a focal point. And another really fun thing that we've been doing is really thinking about and developing the modular furniture for this. We want it to be somewhere between function and also serve as a works of art in the area. We've been thinking about this more in detail and are currently prototyping a couple versions of this at full scale. The design is based on the simple combination of two geometries, an equilateral triangle and plan, and semicircular elevations as the supports. It can be used alone or in various combinations. We're even exploring the potential of stacking and storing the benches in a way that's visually interesting. Finally, this is a quick rendering showing what our current studies for phase 1 might look like. This would be during a weekend event, for instance, with a food truck or a vendor temporarily stationed at the site. The furniture occupying the street, we think really makes a civic room for the neighborhood to enjoy. While we don't have a definitive date or timeline to share, we are working with our partners on the best path forward. So, with this image, really, we want to say thank you to everyone for listening and joining us on this Thursday evening. And now I believe Catherine will join us for some Q&A and discussion with you about this project.
Thank you, Daniel and Lulu. Great presentation. Really excited to be here with everyone virtually. And I think Chris Roberts is going to help us manage any questions in the chat. So if there are questions from those who are online right now, we're here to answer as best as possible.
Mm-hmm. Nice caveat. I like that. Okay, chat question. I'm curious about the materials used for this project from Amy. Catherine, I think we can take that one. Well, there's several that are being entertained at the moment.
Right.
I should say, first of all, that a part of our strategy is really to try to give as much to the public in terms of public amenities as we can within a reasonable budget for the project. So what you're seeing in terms of the mural piece was at first imagined as something that would be painted directly onto asphalt, the most common and ubiquitous material you'd find for a street anywhere. We are, however, investigating the possibility of concrete instead as a potential more long-term investment in the infrastructure of the area. It's something that we're looking into. Now, there's a lot of other materials at stake. The furniture right now is being prototyped out of aluminum that would be painted with a durable finish, whether that is powder coat or another kind of gloss paint finish for that. And in reality, for phase 1, that's it. The comment, it just sounds kind of silly when I say it out loud like that. You think there'd be a litany of things. We're looking into infrastructural improvements, including providing electrical hookups, so that we can think about lighting and think about, if we can finally push for a little more food truck action every once in a while. Special events is all I'm saying for folks in the city, that we can enjoy that space and have the proper hookup for them, or for that matter, for a performance if one wants to happen there, that could be the case. We are thinking about lighting and also thinking about adding things in terms of planting in the planters that would be movable and flexible as well with the scheme, and lighting as well. I should mention the big circular canopy that you see is not currently part of the plan for phase 1. However, it's something that we will be studying down the road for the project.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, the paint itself would be either latex or a water-based paint. That's typical for asphalt mural projects. And I think we've also looked into street grade paint and may be able to use it for some of the colors such as white and yellow. One of the challenges with street grade paint is just it doesn't come in a lot of colors. So traditionally this type of work is done with a latex or a water-based paint.
Lulu, I believe that Brian Honish wants to know, this was your idea, wasn't it? In many ways, yes, Brian. The answer is always yes. Let's see here. Cheryl Veith would like to know, would it be possible to add a bit of orange into the scheme since we live in a very competitive 2 high school town? Wow, we're totally out of the loop on high school colors, aren't we? You want to say something?
Oh, I think that yes, the colors were something that we used from the very beginning, and I think it's one of these things that we've been showing all of the images in, and I think we have a lot of people do like the color scheme, but it's not set in stone. So I think moving forward as we venture into design development and understand really what's available. Daniel mentioned this idea of potentially using pigments and concrete that would change some of the color scheme. understanding really what's widely available. This could be a potential opportunity to also garner more community feedback. So the colors aren't set in stone. We're still sort of working through them overall.
Lulu, that sounds like a good question to add to our survey. So
Yeah.
as I'm watching some of the questions come through the chat, interesting questions around materials, programming, and we'll definitely be seeking some more input around those very specific questions and more to come.
Yes, absolutely. It looks like the next question in the chat from Glenda, hi Glenda, is where will the furniture be stored when it isn't outside? At least we intend for a great deal of the furniture to remain outside. It's part of the reason why we're making space in front of the CAAC building, and also looking at improvements along, I guess you would say, is the north edge, which is adjacent to the existing city parking lot there. There's some planted areas which frankly are in need of some love. So we're going to try and spread some love to that area, and also create pockets where furniture could be out of the public way in terms of the street, but also still stay on display. And again, we're working now on prototyping at full scale. How could the furniture, let's say for instance, in front of the CAAC building, be stacked in such a way, if it wasn't being used, where it's still visually interesting, kind of like a sculpture. So we're looking at that from not only our favorite point of view, which is I guess an aesthetic one, but also from safety and liability concerns and things like that. But we're trying to find ways to keep most of it accessible to the public as often as possible, I guess is the answer to that.
And I think also movable too. I mean, I think such a gem in Columbus is the Irwin Bank Plaza and the movable furniture that is there. And we frequently hear like how loved that space is and how often that furniture is used. And I think some of the benches that Daniel mentioned would be sort of more permanent features that wouldn't be able to be picked up. But having the ability to sort of move some things around and create the environment and your social space with your friends is really important, I think, to us, and I think just how people want to socialize.
Looks like we'd be interested to hear what kinds of programs you envision the space supporting. Yeah, the question about programs is an interesting one. Our response is to turn the question to the community on that one. We actually,
Daniel,
yeah.
I can take a little bit of that question.
Yeah.
Being that the Arts Council has had a long history of programming arts and culture in Columbus, definitely as we get through this first phase, it's very important that we actually get the space designed and implemented, right? Which is exciting to think about. But I do think one other component to this that's really important is that it's not only an Arts Council project with Law Office, it's really a community project. And so there'll be a process for folks to put ideas or submissions for what they'd like to see in that area, but also it's a place that can be used for social gatherings that are more impromptu, sort of a happenstance, grab a book from Viewpoint, get a coffee from downtown, and enjoy just sort of some time outside. I also saw that there was a question about revolving art displays. Will there be? And I just want to remind folks that we have a gallery that was implemented. You mentioned some of this in your presentation, but don't forget 4-in-1 exists and really was the impetus for this project to kind of unfold, because we found that when folks were coming downtown for those programs and events, they needed a place to sit, right? And also that sun that beams down on 6th Street is lovely, but we need a little bit of shade too. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen organically in terms of programs. And again, some things that are going to be kind of pop up. And we'll also have a process to invite folks to have their own event or performance or spoken word. It could be a lot of different ways to think about that.
Yeah, that I have nothing to add there. Thank you, Catherine. That was wonderful. I'm going to try and keep track of where we're at. Colleen has asked, how do you best engage community leaders with these types of approaches when thinking about downtown? For instance, do we just hire you to come up with some concepts and go from there? Sure, but it's funny that we.
There's a few ways of approaching
I think I think there is a few ways. I think that for us, and I mentioned this a little bit or briefly at the beginning, this really emerged out of conversations. And we showed one image, and it's one that we always show for this project. When we completed the mural along the backside of the 411 gallery, that event was just wonderful. And I'm not only nostalgic about it now because we're a year or more into a pandemic where socializing has been an absolute nightmare. But, really what happened organically there for folks chipping in seating, shading, the library provided speakers that we pulled from the basement and rolled over, to the space, just the drinks. But we did have a food truck there. It was amazing. We had enough money left over in the grant to actually pay for everybody's tacos with it. And it just was so wonderful to have people weaving in and out of the gallery, and then the space of the city itself being incorporated into that experience, I think was a truly special thing. And I think that the conversation evolved about where could this go from here? How could we augment it? How could we think about it? How could we improve it and build upon it? Something that's happening. So I think being in tune with what's happening in the city on the ground, putting your ear to the ground, what's happening creatively, what are the organizations that are out there? I know that each and every town and city, and we find this even as we work in more rural communities in Southern Indiana, right? Salem and Washington County is a good example of about 6,500 people there, the population. There's always a pocket of creatives. There's no matter how you slice it, there's some creative energy on the ground, and I think it's waiting to seep up. It just needs to be tapped a bit. Anything else on that? You want to use orange and brown, Josh? Certainly, if it was 1976, yes. Doesn't work. So from John McCormick through Kelsey Finch, I see that that there. Thank you, John. Retail and beverage doesn't work without it. The space is a bit busy. I think the decision to shut down the street versus making it flexible for traffic, I don't see it being sustainable without food and beverage. John, we would love nothing more than to see businesses grow around a project like this and take advantage of the fact that you could spill out and enjoy the street and sit. I saw Kelly somewhere along the way made the joke of another Loquidis. We were so happy to see that news that they're taking over a Columbus gem over off of 25th Street with the Harry Weiss Bank there. Would love to see new life in there.
I think also one thing, we really see success in this project, because first of all, we see it as successful when it is, activated, but also, when it's passive. So on just a regular day. And so when we kind of ended before the video with that last image of showing this space being, a piece of public art that can be, events can happen there. They can foster other, creative exercises or activities, but on a day-to-day, it's a piece of public art, and it's a curious thing that when you're walking down Washington Street or Franklin Street, you might just find, and it might draw you in. I think one thing that, we've noticed, and Catherine can attest to this, is, even just the mural on the east side of the 411 gallery, it has brought, a lot of attention. A lot of people come to get their photograph taken in front of it. So I think like the activation of the street and working with the city to make it, easy for street closures is one component of the project, but we also just see this as a marker for the arts, and we think that the project is successful as a passive project as well as an activated project.
Yeah.
You're going right where I was going. Great minds think alike, right? So we've been working on this for a very long time, and you shared that the Arts Council had been collaborating with LAA Office since the beginning of time. No, 2018, right? And someone had asked, how long has the Arts Council been around? I just want to address that real quick too. And this is an important piece about where we live and get to work, and the joy of being in Columbus is that there is great support for arts and culture. And the Arts Council formed originally as the Driftwood Valley Arts in 1972, and then formed as the Columbus Area Arts Council in 1989, a little refresher there, when it merged boards with the Commons. So it takes a lot of people to make this happen, right? And we're just so fortunate that we can sort of take on the work of those before us and bring it into the present. And I see this project being something that will be something we work on for several years, and it is a response of needs that we witnessed that we needed to respond to, and how great it is to be able to work with you both who live here, right?
But we're all about having food and bev.
Yeah.
For sure.
The more
whether
food
it's
and
in
bev,
food trucks or
yeah.
a permanent cafe, I mean, we just obviously we think that would just elevate the space completely.
And I think that'll be part of our outreach efforts going forward. We'll be reaching out to the local community, and I think that was another comment, you know, about saying, hey, if you would like to get involved, if this is the kind of space that you could see as a venue in some way. I think that idea of a pop-up there is an excellent fit for a space like this. It gives you a chance outside of the bounds of brick and mortar, say, to still have a shot at some business. So we're all for that.
And I think it's our job to make that process easy and accessible. And so that's something that we're definitely working on. It's something that we're working on currently with our project in Salem, and working with the equivalent of the Arts Council there, but the Historical Society, the YMCA, a lot of different organizations, and getting their buy-in to do some programming. So we're definitely interested in opening all the windows up for programming potential with the project.
Let's see. Does Columbus have a dedicated food truck parking area? No, we don't. But I think we'll see. Well, we'll see what happens.
We're working on it. I mean, as part of the project, we're hoping to at least provide the correct electrical hookups. I think the bigger hurdle is just the ordinance that the city currently has for food trucks. And so we want to make it possible to at least have that hookup. And it also could be used for musical events as well.
Yeah.
You're the moderator.
I think, yeah, I'm having a look here. I just, thanks for some of the nice comments here from See the Project Evolve. Some questions there that I think have been answered by Chris in the chat about the CAC's tax situation there taking place downtown. This creates perfect space. Yeah, Catherine, anything else to add as we get towards the end of the list here?
Really great discussion. Lots of conversations will, I think, be had after this. And of course, we always have to plug, if anyone would like to make a contribution to the project, we can do that through www.artsincolumbus.org. You can do that on the website. And we're just so pleased to be at this point, and we'll continue to share updates of this phase one through our newsletter and website and social media and all that good stuff. And I'm really excited that there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm here, and so more to come.
It sounds like we need to get together with John McCormick for food, beverage, or coffee and have a discussion. And last minute missed it, but his project cost to complete. Well, there are many variations on the book, Brian, that we've costed so far in terms of the scope and the materials. And given that that's a pretty not straightforward question, I'm going to have that conversation with you next time we talk.
I think
it's a scalable project. Yeah. Good question, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, I just add to that. I know we have enough funding to complete, the phase one piece that we shared today.
Yes.
We have a lot of opportunities that are still out there to bring in more money for the project. So it is sort of a TBD.
Congratulations.
Opportunities for the general public. Definitely. There's definitely going to be some paint days happening. And so this project is starting to be implemented, I think sometime this summer. So stay tuned. If you don't subscribe to our newsletter currently, you're going to want to do that through our website. Again, that's www.artsincolumbus.com. And it's on the homepage at the bottom of the website, you can subscribe.
Okay.
Law Office, you got any closing thoughts? We've got some other great comments coming in. I think definitely this group will receive that survey. I think we've got a lot to work with here, but do you have any closing thoughts?
We're just really, thankful for the opportunity and, really excited to continue to move the project forward. So, thank you all so much for your time and your questions, and we hope you participate in the survey.
Yeah, and I think, it's really quite a joy, the fact that honestly, we know a lot of you. We're friends or acquaintances, seen around town, been at different events, and it's just very good to see faces, even though they're small here in the Zoom screen, and to know that this continues to, I think, move forward on the strength of a commitment between a lot of folks that want to see exciting things happen, and kind of things that really celebrate and extend the legacy of design and art in Columbus, which is something that was such a big attraction for us moving here, and continues to be a great reason to be here. So yeah, thank you.
Ditto. Thank you, Daniel and Lulu. Thanks, Arts Council, back-end support with Chris and Susanna, and for everyone who signed up for this presentation. We greatly appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you hopefully in person and not on Zoom very soon. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Night, everyone.